Hello everyone, this is a call. So, what I want to talk about today is I want to talk about power as it relates to sexual energy, as it relates to, I guess, your life in general. Uh, so, power, let me talk about it from the reference point of astrology first. So, in astrology, when you're looking at someone's chart, you have two different areas where I would say one tends to look at power. And these two areas actually, in a lot of ways, they tend to express sort of the overall power dynamics of what it's like to be a human being. So when you have, let's say, the 10th house, so the 10th house oftentimes has to do with how power is externalized. So how is power externalized? How is power expressed out into society and out into our culture? And this relates to status and position, one's station in life, so to speak. So now the other house, where you look at power, has to do with the 8th house. The 8th house, glasses are crooked. All right. So the 8th house deals with power as it relates to, I would tend to think about personal power, but also, personal power as it relates to others' power. So, and I'll get into that a little bit more as I go along here. So this idea of power can be looked at once again in two different ways. One is egoic power, which again relates more to that 10th house kind of circumstance as I perceive it. The other form of power relates more to that 8th house. So immature individual who has placements in the 8th house, let's say, is going to look at power through struggle with other people often. So power also can be about the process of transformation. So transformation brings about if the individual can recognize the true source of power, then they can access true the sort of true power in life, which is spiritual power. So egoic power often leads to egoic struggle. Egoic power often leads to one lording over another. Personal power, in terms of as it relates to spirituality, is about what is the ultimate source of power, of energy. That's the universe itself. That is God, and that is the body, right? So the body is how we contain that power. It's how we sort of direct that power. Without a healthy body, for instance, like it becomes very difficult to feel powerful if you're sick, right? Like you feel sick, you feel run down, you're not going to feel particularly powerful. So keeping that in mind, think about the things that bring you true power, true energy. So we could talk about diet, we can talk about exercise, and again, those are things that cumulatively over time will add energy to your overall system. You eat well, you're getting exercise, all this kind of stuff. So right, you're creating the in the case of exercise, you're creating the necessary stress. Let's say I'm doing strength training 3 times a week. You're creating the necessary stress that forces your muscles to adapt to a higher level, to a new level. That's within reason. You can overdo all this stuff, of course. You overdo exercise, then you actually start to tear down your system because you're not recovering correctly. So another kind of power, like another way one could access power, let's say sleep. You don't get great sleep, you feel drained, you don't feel powerful, right? All right, so I think you kind of get the idea. So the true source of power, actually, though, once we get past the sort of food and exercise and sleep and the sort of the mundane aspects, we start to see the true source of power really comes from surrender, letting go into depth, right? And this is why the 8th house is often, as I perceive it, associated with power, like true sense of power, because it's about transformation. Transformation requires death and rebirth, death and rebirth. So and that's the nature of Pluto in the case of astrology. But this process of death and rebirth is what we experience in meditation, in yoga. So an ideal yogic progression looks kind of like this, right? So you do your breathing, right? So that helps you center. You do the exercises, right? So action. That's what I'm getting at here. Action, focus, engagement. Then ideally, after you do the exercise, you do a little relaxation, you do a meditation. Maybe the meditation has you focusing on the tips of the index fingers while you're gazing at the tip of the nose, while you have a mantra. So you have multiple areas in which you're forced to focus and to be attentive or to have attention on those particular places. Now, what does this do? This consolidates energy within the form. Now, I'll get to why that is incredibly important in a moment. So once the energy is consolidated in the form, then what you have is the other half of the polarity here. And again, everything's a polarity. It's inescapable. You don't just like focus, and then do nothing and go about your day doing more activity. Then the yoga, the meditation, and the practices didn't serve a true purpose. They're just exercise at that point. That's what yoga is without true surrender, without meditation. It's just exercise. So keep that in mind. So now, if you do all this yoga, and then you surrender and you let go at the end, and you just go into presence, right? You surrender into presence. You are essentially learning to identify with the middle path, the center channel, your present self, your conscious self, whatever you want to call it, that aspect of you that's been the same from point A to point B, from birth to death. That's your true nature, right? And we all have that aspect. You got taller as you got older, and my beard is gray. All these things are transient in life. They're transitory in nature. They're always changing. Changing is one of the absolute dynamics of life. That is one of the things that you can totally count on always is change. So as your body changes, your thoughts change, your emotions change. We get older, we progress. Some of us regress. A lot of different things happen as we get older, but here's the guarantee that it's change. And it's very much connected to the material plane. So the thing that we have to accept is that there's a bigger picture here. So that in that bigger picture, we discover that bigger picture in meditation, in surrender, in the passive aspect, right? So I go from action to passive, to surrender. And through that process, we start to recognize, now this is what I was going to get to, our holes. We have holes in our energy body. Every one of us do, and it's not a flaw. We're not broken. We have areas where we take on influence from outside of ourselves. A lot of the content of our thoughts are actually areas we're meant to be sensitive to in this lifetime. But sensitive to something, thinking about something, worrying about something, doesn't necessarily mean you're supposed to be involved with it or doing it. Only aware of it. And once you're aware of it, you can make a choice to do something or not do something, right? So if I'm worrying about something, which I do all the time, if I'm worrying about something, I'm only supposed to recognize I'm worrying. Because worrying in and of itself is incredibly unproductive. And not only that, but what does it do? It drains your power. So once you surrender to the bigger picture, the higher self, God, infinite, the universe, that is the source of true power. The 8th house is associated with the occult. The 8th house is associated with hidden things, and it's associated with sex. So true power as it relates to sex, well, that requires a little practice. Because what comes naturally as a 13, 14, 15-year-old boy, let's say? Masturbation. What comes after masturbation? Ejaculation. What happens with ejaculation? Energy is discharged. It is lost. Always. 100% of the time, it is lost. If you are a 14, 15-year-old boy, you are losing energy. It is a hole. The energy goes out. Right? So that is not something that brings you power. Not in that truest sense of the word. So how to utilize sexual energy in order to gain power, true power. So that would be, for instance, one is to refrain from ejaculation, which on this YouTube channel you've heard me say ad nauseum. Two, meditation. Meditation is the key, because within meditation we draw back. Because you can think about it, every time you think about something, every time you set your intention to do something, you send energy in that direction. You think about your mother, your brother, your girlfriend, your boyfriend, whatever it is. You send energy to those people, right? Some part of you goes there. The only way to draw those back is to center. And that's the true source of power. So a couple other things to kind of think about relative to sex and power. So sex can be a transformational process. Let's say you refrain from ejaculation, you decide to approach sex in a sacred way, like yoga, right? So Tantra, as it relates, well, I call Western Tantra, which is like everything about sex as it relates to connection. So within this sort of Western Tantra, or at least how Westerners interpret Tantra, the idea here is that sexual energy is utilized to move energy, right? Yoga, you do all these positions, all these exercises, you're breathing. Why? To move energy. Now, what is energy? Energy is emotion. Emotion, energy in motion. Energy in motion, right? So that could go in motion all different ways, right? A lot of different ways. But yoga is special. Sex is special if you're approaching in this particular way, because it's engaging, right? So you're engaging your body, which helps consolidate energy within the form. If you're engaged with a partner, there's a loop that's created between you and your partner. So you're pressurizing your partner is pressurizing you with what? Energy. Now, the key is once the energy is stirred up, once the energy is moving, you need to center it and let go into meditation. And that's when you find true power. What happens if you don't have true power, sexually speaking? Since I talk about sex all the time. Sexually speaking, if you, and again, I'm coming from a male reference point because I'm a dude, and obviously I understand dudes better than I understand women. So from a male reference point, let's say premature ejaculation and erectile dysfunction and lack of interest in sex. We'll look at those three things. Premature ejaculation, erectile dysfunction, like you can't get it up, and the third one, which I just all of a sudden slipped my mind, but the lack of interest in sex, so apathy. So those three things, they occur, and if you really are honest with yourself and you look at, okay, when was I without interest in sex? I'll give you a moment. So most likely, the times where you were less interested in sex, you were what? Maybe sick, stressed, worry, fatigued from busy day. Again, the symptom is you're not interested in sex. Why? The cause is because you're drained, you're tired, you're beaten, you're depressed, whatever it is. Same thing with erectile dysfunction and premature ejaculation. Like with premature ejaculation, you may be hyper interested in sex, but does that mean you have power? They don't necessarily equate. You may be hyper interested in sex and overly excited, but unless you have the power, the presence, the centeredness to know when to pull back, you're going to premature ejaculate. You're going to release. And with erectile dysfunction, if all your energy is up in thinking all the time, you've got too many holes. Too many holes, all over the place holes. All the energy is leaving. You can't get it up. So, take home here. What is the summation here? The solutions, you can't talk about it. So you can go to your therapist. It's not going to work. You can talk about the shit all you want. You got to do something, right? You got to go from perfect focus and attention, so focusing everything, and then going into surrender, right? So yoga, meditation. Another solution would be, let's see, let me check my notes here real quick. So another solution, let's say in terms of apathy, that may require space. So space from your partners, your lovers, your spouse, spending a little time, right? And sometimes our spouses are all insecure about this. Oh my God, you don't want to be with me. Sometimes you have to explain to them the necessity that you will be a better lover, you'll be more attentive. I'll give you a good example. I don't listen well to my wife. Like, she'll be talking and it's late in the day. I'm tired. I'm a shitty listener at that point. So that's a thing, right? Why am I a shitty listener? Because it requires energy, power to listen. And I'm drained. So it just doesn't work. So that's another option you can think about, is like, how can I find more space from my wife? Again, not all the time. Let's say you have, 1 or 2 nights a month where you're like, hey, I'm going to go set up the tent in the backyard and camp in the backyard. I don't know, whatever. I have a studio, a yoga studio. I can go sleep in my studio. There's different ways to do this. So that's another solution. Let's see. Yeah, I think that, that's enough. So think about, again, in summary here, think about how you can gain more time for you, yoga classes, meditation classes, but again, thinking about cultivating those skills which are going to give you a balance between action and surrender, between attention and letting go, right? So hopefully this is useful. I know this has been a perplexing subject for me for most of my life, which is, why sometimes, like, again, during sex, we'll say, I can go and go and go and go and go. And other times it's just like, as soon as I get into sex, like 20, 30, 40 minutes later, I'm like, I can't keep going. I can't release, I just want to release and I just want to be done. It's usually because of low power. So, keeping in mind diet, exercise, meditation, yoga, again, having space to be in your own aura, these are all important. So, for all of you who've watched this video, I do astrology readings. I do human design readings. Human design is a form of astrology. So if that's interesting to you, you can reach out. I also consult and do a lot of work with individuals who are being challenged by sexual issues. So I help individuals work through those challenges. I also help couples work through those challenges. So with all that said, thank you for watching this video. Thank you.